Meantime, former U.S. President Donald Trump has agreed to meet with the FBI for an interview on his assassination attempt. The FBI is hoping to get Trump's perspective on what he saw as the agency continues to try and figure out what motivated 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks to target the former president while he was campaigning. He did extensive planning and research on attempted assassinations. And let's now bring in Michael Fauntroy, Director of the Race, Politics and Policy Center at George Mason University. Michael, good evening and thank you for your time once again. Always appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Akshay. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Let's just get your thoughts first on President Biden's Supreme Court reforms announcement. Why do you think he's done that now, the timing of it, when especially it stands very little chances?
Well, there's always politics involved in some of these kinds of rollouts. They're both sides of the ideological spectrum in the United States will try to advance policies and make a lot of noise about them, knowing that they don't stand much of a chance to pass. The difference here is that we're beginning to be in the heat of a presidential election. And the Supreme Court, in my opinion, should be more of a talking point than it has been. The Supreme Court's public opinion standing right now is as low as it has ever been. And part of that is because there's a seeming sense of just significant arrogance among some Supreme Court justices because they are serving life appointments. So here's a statistic for you. From the founding of the Republic until 1970, the average tenure of a Supreme Court justice in the United States was about 17 years.
Okay.
In the 53 years since then, the average tenure has been 28 years.
Oh.
And that just speaks to some of the, the lack of turnover, the entrenchment that some Supreme Court justices enjoy. And it really does point to the fact that there's no mechanism in place to do much about them because of their lifetime appointments.
Well, thank you for sharing those statistics, of course, to speak volumes of what's really happening there at the Supreme Court with the tenure of justices there. But let's now get down to elections. With under 100 days to go for elections there, we're awaiting a decision on Kamala Harris's running mate. News is coming in that North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper has removed himself for consideration. Why do you think that is the case?
Well, I have to confess to you, that's a bit of a surprise. I thought that he probably should be the one because North Carolina is the kind of state that could go in either direction. And I thought he'd be very helpful in that regard in nearby Georgia. So I was surprised by that. I think that he pulled out in part because the vetting process is complicated. And there may be something in his background that could be difficult to explain, although it may not be a really big deal. And then lastly, the current lieutenant governor in North Carolina is what many people would understandably refer to as a right-wing extremist. And if Governor Cooper is out on the campaign trail this late summer and fall, then the lieutenant governor, according to the North Carolina Constitution, is empowered to do certain things. And there's a grave amount of concern about the lieutenant governor of North Carolina.
Right, of course, we're keeping a close eye on the other two contenders, but I have to ask you about what's happening with the latest polls. What are they suggesting to you, especially in those 6 swing states, battleground states? Because some reports are now indicating that the margins between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are either almost equal or really narrowing a lot.
She has closed the gap in virtually every battleground state. You look at her national numbers, and they have improved significantly. In fact, she has a plus favorability rating for the first time in quite some time, and President Trump is still mired in a significant negative favorability rating. And when you go to some of these important battleground states, all of the polling rather is in what we refer to as the margin of error, 1, 2, 3 percentage points in one direction or the other.
Right.
So if she's able to maintain this momentum, then she will be looking a lot better a month from now than she does today. Wow. But this is still a bit of a honeymoon period, and so time will tell if it continues.
Yeah, and we know 2.5, 3 months is a long time where elections are concerned. Things change on a dime in politics, don't they, Michael? Appreciate you joining us. Michael Fauntroy, Director of Race, Politics and Policy Center at George Mason University. Thanks again.